my dear Sitecore family. So today we have Devanshi Kakade again on the show. Devanshi comes with an experience of a senior DX engineer here at Horizontal, and she has worked on a number of traditional Sitecore MVC as well as headless projects. And today we are going to talk about experience of a developer when working on headless projects mainly, although we'll definitely touch upon traditional Sitecore MVC to understand things a bit in detail. So Devanshi, first of all, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Varun, for inviting me again.
Yeah, and let's directly jump into it. So as a developer, as a Sitecore developer, I am working on Sitecore MVC, and I'm moving to Sitecore Headless, right? So I would like to know what are the changes or what are the differences in experience that I really feel.
Okay, so Varun, if I talk about the traditional MVC, in that what used to happen from technical point of view, we have HTTP request begin pipeline.
Yes.
It used to collect data and presentation details until the time the browser has to wait for the data and the presentation.
Yep.
Okay. Now in the Sitecore Headless, these two are separate. The data is separate and the presentation is separate.
Yep.
So presentation responsibility is given to the front end or a JavaScript engineer. Okay. While the data responsibility, it is given to the backend developer.
Right.
So if you say, so the whole responsibility which used to perform by the backend developer in the traditional MVC has been divided into two persons now.
Correct.
Okay.
I remember, initially like with Sitecore MVC, of course, we have somebody developing the HTMLs and giving it to us.
So if you see during that time, effort was we used to put more on the developer. If there is some change in the front end portion, or if you say the presentation, at that time also back end and the front end developer has to invest their time together on that.
Yes.
Okay. Now that time has been reduced in the headless because the front end developer will mostly focused on their part, while the back end developer is completely responsible to provide the Sitecore as an API to their front end developer.
Right. I agree, and well, that is definitely a bigger advantage because then, as a backend developer, I think there are things which I had to take care of initially when it is MVC.
Yes, yeah. Like so if you talk about backend developer, they used to write the controller, view, model, everything.
Yeah.
Okay. And front end guy has to sit with them to write the some JavaScript code along with them.
Correct. And the HTML might be looking beautiful, but something is distorted here.
Yeah, then again they have to sit and do the work again.
So this challenge has been solved with Headless.
Yeah, of course. So in this, the front-end developer also got the opportunity to work with the modern frameworks such as Next, React, Vue, Angular frameworks. So their boundary has expanded. So Sitecore has given this such kind of product. Okay, so they can equally give importance to the backend developer and the front-end developer as well.
Sweet. I mean, it's definitely a great thing to know eventually that we can really focus on something, because then instead of dividing our effort into something, when you focus on something, it's a better output eventually.
Yeah, and in that, it is not like that the backend developer is fully focused on the writing the .NET code or something like that. They also get the opportunity to work on the front end part as well. Okay, it is a learning curve for them as well, not just writing, creating the templates and the creating renderings and writing the code. They can also explore this front-end frameworks as a world is moving towards a full stack development. So this is the great path for everyone.
That is a great point which you mentioned regarding being a full stack.
Yeah.
So with this, they can also move towards full stacks, which is easily possible or faster possible, I believe.
Yeah.
All right. Well, when that is cleared, so with Sitecore MVC and also let's say usual SXA. Right, we used to have rendering variants.
Yes.
So initially we used to write the rendering variants inside CMS, right?
Right.
You must be aware of those.
Yes.
So how do we used to do those in traditional MVC?
Yeah, so what we used to do, we just create the templates and the renderings, and then we write the similar thing in our backend code. Okay, we used to write some Scribble script as well in that.
Yes,
Yeah.
correct. So what is this exactly the same in headless, or is it different in headless?
Now the things are different. Here the backend developer will mostly create the templates. They will create the JSON rendering mainly, and they will provide the component data as an API to front-end developer, and then the front-end developer mainly use that JSON rendering name as a mapping. Same, let's say I create a demo rendering. The demo has to be name of the JSON rendering in the CMS, and the demo has to be name in the rendering in your code repository as well.
Right.
In the rendering, so they will map the rendering according to the same name, and the front-end guy will fetch the data in their let's say next framework.
Sure. Yep.
And they'll create a variant of the component data.
Okay. When this happens, so of course there is names. So this is for default. It is great.
Yeah.
Right. So if you have like one particular component and then you have that component having kind of the same name, and it is mapped. But in SXA we used to have rendering variants for a component, right? Like just as you talked about, let's say you can also write Scriban or things like that. So you can have, let's say, demo rendering, as you mentioned, right? So we have, let's say, one title, one description, one image, and a CTA.
Yes.
Right. So its UI is different here and there, and then we call them as rendering variants.
Yes.
Right. So same template, but then sometimes you want to make image larger and in the center, or sometimes you want to have like a left image and a right text, or a right image and a left text, stuff like that, or you don't want the CTA at all.
Yes.
Right. So such things were possible.
Yeah,
right?
yeah, of course.
So that is what we generally look at, visually different as rendering but the same component. So how does this manage, or how is this developed or managed in headless side of it?
Yeah, so Varun, what we do from the backend developer, the developer used to create the templates. As you told, we'll use the same template for the two different variants. That is the concept of rendering variant. We create a template, we create a rendering. Once that is done, from the front end side, what we'll do, we'll have a mock data of that component data, what we have created in the CMS. At this side, we create a two different variant from the in the Next.js code. What you say, if you are using TypeScript or not, you will create a two different and you will export them.
Right. So then how is the mapping between Sitecore and the front end side of it? Is it also with names?
Yeah, it is also using the same name from the application side and from the CMS side.
Okay. So let me just step back and try understanding it. So we used to have like those rendering variants, and then each rendering variant we'll of course give some name, although write code there.
Yeah.
So now with headless, do we write that code, or because the code now has completely gone to the front end piece of it, right? So that name would be there in the front end application or the rendering host.
So in the CMS, what you will do, you will create two rendering variants. Let's say demo with left image, demo with the right image.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
And the same in the front end application, what you will do, you will export the component data as a demo with left variant and demo with the right variant.
So that has to be exactly the same.
Yeah, the name has to be same. The component name, the variant name, that mapping is strict at this point of time.
Okay. And initially we used to manage all the theming and CSS and all again with SXA and traditional MVC, which was on also through CMS.
Yeah.
But now I think that will go to, because the rendering host is a different application, that will be on the front end piece of it.
Yeah.
Right?
So the styling part is completely moved to the front end application due to rendering host. It completely take care of the how the application will look like from that point of stand.
Okay. So in that case, I mean, again, it is of course a better deal, because then the one who is a front end skilled person can really focus on that and get it done.
Yeah, right? Yeah, of course. From the if I talk about the front end, there are powerful tools available. Let's say Tailwind CSS, they can explore more if they are writing styling through this advanced version of the styling. They can use the next UI components as well. So there are a couple of things in market available nowadays. So they can explore these.
All right. Well, the next point I would like to touch upon is really related to how your traditional MVC used to perform versus how headless performs, and the reasons behind that. So why, like, if I compare a traditional MVC website, like, and if I compare a variant of it, let's say in headless, I always feel headless is faster.
Yeah, so let me talk about this in the normal MVC website. So if you see the data and presentation, both are on the backend side only, okay, both are dependent. So the response time is larger. While in the headless, what we used to do, we have a mock data available, okay, through which the front-end developer can start the work from the beginning. Okay, so they don't have to mostly dependent on the backend developer. So it reduce the development time, and as well, the front-end frameworks are faster when you talk about the client-side technology. So these are the faster in the performance. They use the state management, they have cookies as well, so they perform well in that case. And if you see generally in the MVC, what we used to do, we used to deploy our code to server, and the server, that page is getting built and the response is served to the browser, to the client.
Yes.
So this time is reduced, because if I talk about the next stage, so what we do, we deploy our build output there, okay. So our data or page is already assembled them. Whenever we call the page from the browser, the data is already available there. We just display them, so that you see the page performance is faster.
Right. So because it is on CDNs.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. So that as a part of the rendering host build or the deployment, the pages are already created and available as,
Yes.
like, usage of SSR and SSGs.
So
Static.
they take care through the SSR and SSG.
So Devanshi, as far as traditional MVC goes, we used to have components, and we used to have different ways of getting the data. So it could be of course page type and data source type components, but then sometimes we want some specific functionalities, so we used to write pipelines, right? So how is that as compared to in headless?
Okay, so Varun, in that case, if I say, generally we do not write pipelines or processor in the front-end framework, okay. There is some out-of-the-box things are available through Sitecore Headless, let's say content resolver, okay, if you know this terminology. So these are the out-of-the-box. There are, I think, 5 to 6 type of content resolvers are already given by Sitecore. If that is not fulfilling your requirement, you can obviously create your own the custom resolver as well. Okay.
Right.
So if I talk about the resolver, they will the layout data used to resolved using that resolver.
Okay.
If you want to know how your page data looks like, you can directly there is a what do you say, the URL is available, the layout data, and through the API key you can fetch that data, okay. It will give you the full page presentation, the routes, placeholder, the components, how those are placed in between of placeholders, and what is the Sitecore context. So you will get everything through that layout data.
Okay, I think that brought me to another question. So as a backend developer, let's say, of course, as a front-end developer, I mean, initially I used to look at the whole page, right? And I used to say whether the page looks great or not. But with headless, from as a backend developer perspective, what are the testing methodologies? So I think you mentioned that layout data has different things. So what are the things that I would need to validate in that layout data?
So mainly from the layout data, you need to see if your component is correctly mapped or not. Through layout data, you can map your component correctly. You will fetch the data, and also you can write a, what do you say, you can also write the Java GraphQL GraphQL query to fetch the limited data from the component instead of getting the full data.
Right. Okay. Yes. So, like for example, if I'm using the same template for multiple components,
Yes.
but then for renderings, like maybe one component is using only 2 fields out of the 10 fields which are there. In that case, I can filter it out using GraphQL.
Yeah. So the best example is the, let's say you have a list of articles. Okay, in the one node, you have a list of articles. You, and on the page you are displaying the blog list component. Okay, article list or blog list. At that time, on the listing page, you do not need everything from the blog template.
Correct.
Okay, you do not need description or something like that. On the listing page, you mainly need the image, title or date. So such kind of things you can filter out through the GraphQL query. So that is the great advantage of using the GraphQL.
Great example.
Yeah.
So instead of fetching the complete layout data and having a big data chunk being served, you can only have a few things available which can be then rendered onto the page.
Yeah, so you need to work on the syntax part of it. Obviously, that is a new thing. So you need to learn how to write a GraphQL query. Sitecore has provided the great documentation over there. They have specified the different queries, how to work with them. So those learning material is available then.
Right.
And if you see how the performance is getting faster through this GraphQL query.
Sure. Yes, absolutely. I think if the data reduces, of course, the performance will be faster. Sure. So can I say there are 2 type of renderings that can have, or 2 type of rendering mechanisms that Sitecore applies for getting the data? Like you mentioned, one is layout data and second is
GraphQL. Yes. So layout data, you will get everything, and that is required whenever you are displaying some detailed page or so. That also depends on your requirement, how it varies. Like project to project, use case to use case. So it is not like that you do not need the layout data at all.
Sure. Now let me ask an example. Like sometimes what happens, we added a rendering, okay, but of course on visually it was easy to notice that, oh, I added this rendering but it is not visible. So how do I check this from a headless perspective? So
there are debug steps also available in the headless. Okay, so you can see in the Visual Studio Code, you can attach the debugger through which you will be able to see how where is the problem. Okay.
Okay, so attach to process is still possible?
Yeah, it is still process. It is possible, and recently one of our colleague has already written a blog on that as well.
Right.
Yeah.
Sure. Okay, I think one more way which I can assume which would be helpful here would be, let's say we have the component added, and you mentioned that you can look at the whole layout data of an item, right? You have placeholders and everything.
Yes.
So let's say if I have added a template, and if the template is not available on the front end side of it, I can go and check the layout data and see if maybe I have published it or not, or maybe if I have added a wrong placeholder for a given rendering, then that particular things will not be available in layout data.
Yeah, of course. So you need to create the template rendering and the data in the CMS. Once that is done, you just make sure it is available on or a preview through the preview API. Once that is available, you can see the things are as required as it is, then publish it. Again, verify it through the CD website. Okay.
Yeah.
And that is done, then the same data will go to front end. So mostly this is the cycle we follow, and in that case we get the less issue. But at using these points, you can do a troubleshooting wherever things are available or not.
Sure. So I know none of us are front-end developers here, but then I would still like to touch upon it. As a front-end developer, how do I really, like, of course with Next I can write storybook, have storybook and have content from there. But then if I want to see how the data is coming in from Sitecore and like really plug it into my rendering and see the Sitecore data being available on the renderings, how do I do it?
Can you give me some example on that?
Okay, so for example, I as a backend developer, I have already created the templates, I have created the rendering.
Yes.
I have added the content,
Hmm.
and let's say the demo version, demo component which you mentioned, right? So I created all those things in the backend. I've created the title, description, and an image, and all the content is available in my layout service,
Yes.
right? As a front-end developer, how can I consume that layout service to build the front-end component?
Okay, so front-end developer has to install some Sitecore packages from their side. Okay, once they install, they are ready to accept the data while considering Sitecore CMS as an API, their API point of view. Okay, so once they write, they will get those data through their component factory. Is that answer your question, or if you need some more clarity at some point?
I mean, I got it. Okay, so I think the preliminary basis, yes, of course, there will be something required so that it can connect with the Sitecore.
Yeah, so they need to connect the CMS with their front-end application. So if they are working with the connected mode.
Okay, so how do we enable connected mode in that case?
In that case, they need to provide certain configuration to connect with their API host, the API key, and the application name through which they can connect with the Sitecore instance in that their application.
Okay, sure. So I think this similar pattern would also be utilized by the rendering host, like whenever you deploy it.
Yes,
right?
yes.
So you would need to provide such variables even there as well, because then of course you want to connect to one particular environment of a Sitecore.
So whenever you are creating rendering host, you need to always specify your application name in that, your rendering host URL, rendering engine URL. So this works as a front end. Whenever you are running your local host site, your rendering host consumes data from the backend API, the CMS.
Sure. And I assume this would be in the environment file?
Yeah, we have a .env file. In that we need to write these environment variables.
Right. So for local it will be environment file versus, let's say for that matter, like either Vercel or Netlify, right? So they already have their environment variables section where you can create those and connect your front-end application which is deployed to the Sitecore environment.
Yeah, obviously, if we specify those in the .env file, then those are reading from that. Otherwise, if you are specified at the deployment type, that is on Vercel or something like that, so it will be reading from their side.
Right, but I think from a recommended practice perspective, I would not want to deploy my env file over there, right?
Yeah,
so I think it is better to consider environment variables.
Yeah, but in local we generally create the .env.local
env
from our developer point of view. So whenever we work multiple developer in the same project, so they can work with that.
Correct, and of course it will not be going to the Git.
Yeah, so we are not committing such files in the Git.
Cool. So I think it was a great overall flow that I really see. So thank you, Devanshi, for your knowledge on differences between MVC and headless. I know it's not very easy to explain these things because they are highly technical in nature. Although thank you for simplifying things for us. Well, that was Devanshi for us, guys. And well, if you have any questions regarding how a developer experience changes from from MVC to headless, feel free to contact us or feel free to connect with her on LinkedIn. Cheers.